morning and welcome to my YouTube channel. It's Saturday the 7th of May. Now this morning I have spent an hour here at the Lagoon here in Palmerston North watching the sun come up. Also having a chat to a gentleman who was paddling in the lagoon. The object of today's video is to capture two golden hours in the same day, and that is the morning and the afternoon. Now today I'm on the opposite side of the lagoon that I normally photograph from. I'm on the west side and just photographing into the sun as it came up behind the hills and behind the trees. And we've had a beautiful morning, and I'm hoping that the resulting pictures have some wonderful reflections and colours in them. So thank you, and I'll put the pictures up now. Thank you. Now, while you're watching these images in the lagoon, I just want to talk a little bit about what I do when I'm out photographing like this. Now, one of the things that I do use in preparation for these photographs is an app called Photopills. It is an app on my phone which tells me the position of the sun and the moon at any time. Now, in the image that you can see, the thick yellow line is the point where the sun rises. And I'll talk more about Photopills a wee bit later, because I also used it when I went to the square to sort out where that goes. Now, also one of the things that I used quite a bit was the 16 to 35 2.8 Canon lens, which my super wide Canon lens. I don't use it very much, and one of the things we're going to discuss in a future video is whether I should sell it. And to be honest, there is an answer to that, but we'll deal with that nearer the time. Also, in terms of exposure settings, now I start off on an ordinary sun, or I did start off that day at about 500 ASA, f16 as my aperture, and shutter speeds which ranged between 100th of a second and 1/24th of a second. And some people have said, how do you handhold at 120 at 1/24th of a second with a reasonably heavy DSLR? You've got 3 points of contact. You've got your eye. Your eye is on the camera, and you've got two hands, and your two hands are against your chest, anchored against your chest, which is supporting it pretty well. I find that for where there's not much in the way of other movement, that you can get down to, I try to keep above 1/40th of a second, but I can drop as low as 1/24 at 24mm. The other things that I took into consideration that day were the things that are going on around, like the clouds, and how I expose the sky. So the overall image is quite reasonably bright. So it's quite acceptable to underexpose by a stop and get a good detail all the way through the image and right into the shadows. The modern photo processing systems like Photoshop cope with that really well. If you've got nothing there in the sky, then it just turns to mud. And there's one of the panoramas in the square where in one corner we haven't exposed it properly, and it just turns to an area of bright white with no colour. So that's really what I'm talking about there. It was a good morning out. It was a gentleman stopped by and talked to me for around about quarter of an hour or so, he was paddling his kayak around. He's a more of a phone photographer, but he's also got a friend who's been involved professionally with photography in a big way. Now, just introducing the square, and these are the images from Photopills initially, and plus a couple from Google Maps, which I used to work out. The sunset is the brown line, just going out the corner of the square, the northwest corner of the square, and it's quite interesting. Thank you. Well, it's about 3:45, about half an hour before golden hour starts. I'm not going to stay right until sunset, because sunset is probably, my guess is we won't have a particularly good one, because we've got clouds, but the clouds are thicker towards the beach than here, and that's what's happening. So I'm going to be focusing on reflected light rather than transmitted light, and I'm going to be focusing, pointing the camera with the way the light is coming. I'm going to be trying to get the effect of the low light on the buildings around the square, and that's what I'm going to do. Thank you. Thank you. While you're just looking at these square panoramas, I'll just background you to the conditions on the day and what I did. Now, it was quite bright and contrasty. There was a few clouds around in the background, as you can see in this one of the old police station. I walked around and found a couple of spots that I quite liked. I'm really keen to try and include the lights, the clock tower, the FMG building, and the other building over on the FMG side of the square. Its name just escapes me at the minute. One of the problems I had was the square, particularly on the eastern side, was pretty busy. And I had one panorama which I scrapped because I actually ended up with half a car in the panorama and couldn't get rid of it. I really am quite impressed with the square, the way it's set up these days. There's some beautiful sculpture and artwork in there. Then I headed towards where the FMG building is, and on that side of the square, and there's quite a nice area there with some duck ponds, which are quite nice to photograph around, because one of the rules I have, where possible, is to introduce water into landscape photographies. It certainly worked pretty well in the morning with the sunrise, and it worked pretty well as well with the panoramas in the square. Now, if you it's time to wrap this video up, and if you're new to the channel, then please consider subscribing. If you have enjoyed the content, please use the thumbs up button and like the content. Also, if you want to give me some feedback, then please do so by putting your comments in the comments section on the YouTube page. Thank you very, very much for supporting my channel and for watching the video. If you've watched this far, I'm really, really appreciative of your support. Thank you very much.